What's going on, y'all? Today we got creating an NBA GOAT pyramid, man. Let's get into it.
This is a basketball pyramid of greatness, and today we're going to be making one. Now, the other day, while tuning into the always insightful Colin Cowherd, I watched as he elaborated on a segment regarding a basketball pyramid of greatness. You've probably seen similar charts. Players listed in a pyramid formation, the bottom of the pyramid containing the most players, the top containing the least, and the greatness of these players in ascending order. Just to even make this pyramid, a player must virtually be universally regarded as a top 50 player of all time, some of which are up for debate and opinion. So in this particular case, Colin was breaking down a pyramid with about 30 players. The top 30 players of all time, according to NBA Chemistry and Ballers Tribune on Instagram. Colin made a few of his own personal corrections to the pyramid, but overall, he agreed with it. And I somewhat agree with this pyramid as well. However, I think we can do better. So today, I'm going to create my own GOAT basketball pyramid, break down each and every player on my greatness pyramid, and elaborate on each pick as well. But before I do, we need a little bit of context here. Basketball pyramids are nothing new. At its basic form, they're just a visual representation of the greatest players of all time. Of course, according to the person making the pyramid. But what makes this specific method of organizing a GOAT list a bit more practical than other methods is that rather than listing each player one after another, a pyramid formation allows you to create tiers, or levels, to greatness. So, for example, if two players are extremely close in greatness and you can't decide exactly who should be higher all time, you can just simply put them in the same tier. Is Paul Pierce better than Gary Payton, or is Gary Payton greater than Paul Pierce? Well, that depends on who you ask. But you can certainly say that they belong on the same tier of greatness. The basketball greatness pyramid allows you to rank players all time without being so specific that you're forced to box players into a spot, while being just specific enough to put them in a fairly accurate and universal position all time. In 2009, the brilliant Bill Simmons published the book of Basketball, which featured his clear, concise, and respectable basketball pyramid. Within his book, Bill established the credentials on which he ranks these players, including NBA championships, regular season and playoff statistics, as well as longevity and flair. As a whole, a lot of things have changed since his original pyramid in 2009. But if you take a look at the top 40 players on Bill's basketball pyramid, not too much has shifted. Tim Duncan won another title, LeBron won 3 titles, 3 finals MVPs, and 2 more regular season MVPs. Dwayne Wade won 2 more titles, and Dirk won another title as well. You could almost say that this is an updated version of the NBA at 50, the 50 greatest players of all time back in 1996. At the time, this was the most reputable list to date. But that was 14 years before Bill published his list. And in that 14 years, a lot changed. But as good as Bill's pyramid is, there's a few problems I have with it. Of course, this is all my personal opinion, but first of all, Kobe is too low. This was after his second title run where he won 2 more rings, and he's still ranked just number 8 all time. Considering Bill Russell played in an era with only 8 to 10 teams, I think he's ranked a bit too high. An amazing player would dominate in any era, but personally I probably wouldn't have him this high. Ori made it on the list at 84. He does have an immaculate postseason resume, which clearly plays a large role in his position on this list, but as a player, I don't really see him as a top 90 or even top 100 player of all time. But with that being said, I can understand why he falls where he does on this list, considering the man was a big contributor to 7 titles. Chris Paul made it on the list after just 4 seasons in the NBA at number 90, which is extremely impressive. Now, there's a Reddit thread on this basketball pyramid back in 2017, and most fans agree that if you were to rewrite this pyramid at the time, Wade and Dirk would both make it into the top 25, Steph makes the list, and LeBron creeps up into the top 5. This pyramid is impressive because it has 96 players, and the formula in which Bill ranks these players is concise and consistent. Bill has a little bit of a hometown bias towards his Celtics, but other than that, it's pretty great. Another basketball pyramid, one that was more recent and the one that I featured at the beginning of this video, was a GOAT pyramid made by NBA Chemistry and Ballers Tribune on Instagram. Now, in their pyramid, they created 5 different tiers, with each tier signifying another level of greatness. I think this pyramid is decent, it's good, but in my personal opinion, it does have its flaws. Some of which I can't bring up without giving away my own pyramid, but a few things that I respectfully disagree with. Dirk is too high. I mean, he is a legend, but when you consider all things, and when you compare his resume and his accomplishments to some of the other guys on this list, I think he should be a bit lower than where he is. If Shaq is tier 2, then Duncan, Bird, and Kareem must be tier 2 as well. I do like how they have KD up there. Although he still has a lot of basketball ahead of him, there is no denying his greatness. I think they have Vince Carter a little too high. I love what he's done for the game, all the amazing moments he has produced, but all things considered, he isn't as good as some of these other players. No MVPs, no scoring titles, no titles. And tier 1 doesn't look quite right, but we'll get to that here shortly. So here's the formula for my pyramid. So first of all, longevity is important, but personally I value a player's peak more than their longevity. Some players played for 15 plus seasons but never made an all-star team. Others played for a decade and lit the league on fire for a couple seasons. I like to lean towards the players who reached the highest peak rather than the players who were the most consistent. Of course, both of these qualities are extremely important. You could say that my list is a combination of skill, accomplishments, and quality of career. Second, as much as I would like to make a list on pure basketball ability, there are other factors that come into play. For example, just considering a player's skill set and straight basketball talent, I would have a guy like Tracy McGrady in my all-time top 20 list. But of course, we have to consider things like accolades, rings, career numbers, accomplishments, and that's where T-Mac falls short and falls out of this list. For example, on Bill Simmons' list, Tracy McGrady was 77th all-time, whereas Robert Parrish was ranked 59th all-time. I'm sorry, but Robert Parrish was not a better basketball player than Tracy McGrady. But all things considered, you could say that he had a better career. The third thing is that for every player that you feel deserves a spot on this pyramid, that player must take the spot of another player. Far too often, I see all-time lists and people criticizing those lists, mentioning players that they think deserve a spot on that list. But at the same time, they can't elaborate on who exactly they should take that spot from. The fourth factor in my formula, and one of the biggest flaws with creating all-time lists and charts, is that era plays a tremendous role in a player's legacy and greatness, but there's no real way of quantifying that role. Take Fred VanVleet of the Toronto Raptors. Fred is a solid backup point guard in today's NBA. But in 1965, with the skill set that he has today, Fred VanVleet would be an all-NBA point guard. The game has evolved, nutrition and training methods are getting better and better every year. The average player in today's league is without a doubt better than the average player 40 to 50 years ago. But think about it like this. Rather than considering who is flat out better, consider who was greater relative to their competition. Of course, it's not the only factor that matters, but it's an important one.
That is a great argument, man. I've been saying that.
People will disagree with this list, and that's
I've been saying that a little recently, man.
Regardless of how accurate a list may seem to some, it will always be inaccurate to others. I don't expect everyone to agree with my list, just as I don't agree with everybody else's list. In fact, I don't even think there's a way to accurately make a greatness pyramid. There are lists out there of the greatest players of all time created by former legends, current players, and established members of the basketball media, and even that list gets roasted and torn apart. You just can't please everyone. But that's okay. In fact, I encourage y'all to share your pyramids in the comments below, and feel free to tell us why you have yours arranged the way you
facts.
do. So now that we've seen examples,
facts. There's a lot of players though. That's why I don't be doing stuff like this, y'all. I have to have all the players listed out in front of me. I have to be on Basketball Reference, all that.
8 for 8 in the finals, 13-time NBA All-Star. Rest in peace to this legend. Next is Elgin Baylor, a player that doesn't really get a lot of mention these days, averaged over 38 points per game while actively serving in the military. Held the record for the most points in an NBA game before Wilt surpassed him, and still holds the record for the most points in a finals game. David Robinson. Now, Robinson was a player that could do a lot of everything. Managed to lead the league in scoring, lead the league in blocks, lead the league in rebounds, won a Defensive Player of the Year award, won an MVP, and won 2 NBA titles. Next is Bob Pettit, another player that doesn't get the recognition he deserves, was part of the team that handed Bill Russell and the Celtics their only finals loss during that 60s dynasty. So here's something pretty crazy for those who aren't too familiar with Pettit. His career averages are 26 and 16 a game. The next player on tier 5 is Dirk Nowitzki, a player that has earned the respect of NBA fans around the globe throughout his 21-year career. Definitely one of the best foreign players of all time. Next is Allen Iverson. So one of the most common phrases with Allen Iverson is that people say he's pound for pound the greatest basketball player ever. And that may very well be true. Some NBA fans would argue that he deserves to be higher on this list, and I can definitely understand that, but having him at this spot puts him somewhere between top 25 and top 30 all time. Iverson is an example of a player that skill-wise could definitely fall a lot higher on this list, but because of his lack of hardware and longevity, falls where he does. Nonetheless, an incredible player. Next is Moses Malone. Won 3 league MVPs in a 5-year stretch and was arguably the best player in the NBA throughout that stretch. Jerry West, the logo himself, an NBA legend, phenomenal scorer, only has 1 ring, but with his 1-8 finals record was 14 games away from having 9 rings. Of course, unfortunately, it's not that simple, but this puts into perspective how close he was to many rings rather than just 1. In fact, 6 of those 8 finals losses were to that Celtics dynasty. Next, we have Charles Barkley. I don't think Charles' spot on this pyramid needs much of an explanation. Incredible player, MVP winner, would definitely be a lot higher if he had more playoff success. And rounding out tier 5 is Kevin Garnett. 15-time All-Star, League MVP, one of the best defensive big men of all time, and a 4-time rebounding leader. KG really set the stage for future, mobile, athletic stretch 4s. Now, before we continue, these players are in no particular order. As I stated before, one of the many perks to a basketball pyramid as opposed to a numerical list is that there is a lot of flexibility with these tiers. For example, you can make an argument that Allen Iverson was better than Charles Barkley, or that Jerry West was greater than Elgin Baylor, but the overall premise is that they are all within the same realm of greatness. As I said before, some of these players may be a low tier 5, others may be a high tier 5. But unfortunately, that's all we have time for today, so be sure to tune in tomorrow for part 2 of our basketball GOAT pyramid. The stage is set.
You serious? Come on, Jimmy.
Only a handful will make it.
Come on,
Jimmy. In the comments below.
Let's do it in one
jump. For part 2 tomorrow, where I'll break down my pick.
That's the end of this one, y'all. So, if you guys enjoyed, y'all know what to do. Make sure you click on the last reaction on your screen right now. Turn on post notifications. Links in the description. That last reaction is good for your health. Michael Jordan going down. I'm telling you. And I'm out of here, man.